So joining us now on the WINFL show, we have the one, the only Jaguar Gator 9. Colin, how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, glad to be back for the second time. First time I was here, I had some hope about the Jaguars. I still have some hope, but now it's coming off a 4-win season, so a little bit different, but appreciate you guys having me on.
Not at all. It's always great to have you on. Why don't we start with your Jaguars? Because Patrick is also a Jags fan, and we've been listening to him all year. So it'd be nice to get your thoughts. Nice to get your thoughts. And just tell us, 2024 was a rough season for you. But what did you make of it, and what are you looking for through the draft and then into 2025?
Yeah, so the thing with 24 for me, I've seen bad teams in my life in terms of roster construction, in terms of talent. I really don't think the Jaguars are a bad team in terms of the roster construction. I mean, there are some holes. Obviously, cornerback 2 is a big hole. Interior of the offensive line is a big hole. But I really don't think watching this team play that they're that far off. The coaching was just really bad, and they didn't put the players in the best positions. There were multiple times this season where Brian Thomas was invisible because they never targeted him in the game plan. They played Eric Armstead as an edge rusher instead on the interior, where he thrived in San Francisco. There was one instance in particular that shows how bad this coaching staff was during a game against Philadelphia. Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen. You want them both on the field at the same time, but for whatever reason, only one of them was on the field, and they decided who was on the field by playing rock, paper, scissors. I wish I was making that up, but the coaching staff was deciding people on the field based on rock, paper, scissors. So it was just a mess. Having said that, I mean, I think the Jags lost, 10 or 11 games by one score. A lot of games, every time was close. Just never thought the Jags were going to win. And there was also the incident with Mac Jones, where Doug Peterson was asked, well, Matt, what can Mac Jones do to improve his passing? And he looked like a deer in headlights. He said, I don't know, you played quarterback with Cleveland and Philadelphia. You played quarterback back in the day. You should know. Just say anything. Just literally say anything. The coaching staff was inept. Having said that, we have a direction now. Having said that, I absolutely love the direction that this team is going in right now. Tony Boselli coming in as the EVP. He knows the pulse of the organization. He knows the pulse of the fans. He knows what they want. He has been clamoring for stuff for a long time. I think now we're going to get it. Liam Cohen, I love listening to this guy. I loved him in Tampa. I think his offense fits Trevor perfectly. The way he used 2 running backs and turned the worst running attack in football last year into a top 5 running attack this year. I'm excited for what that means for Etienne and Bigsby. I love how he's going to build from the inside of the offensive line. Same thing with Boselli being an offensive lineman. They want to build on the offensive line, which we desperately need because Trent Baalke neglected that so much. And obviously Trent Baalke is gone. I don't know who the GM is going to be. But Trent Baalke being out changes a lot of things because Baalke was not good whatsoever. And it seems like Shad Khan finally got rid of the cancer that was plaguing the organization for a long time. Maybe it took a weird way to get there. Got rid of it. So I have hope for this team. For the first time in a while, it's nice that we have truly a fresh start. We haven't had a cleaning of the house with head coach and GM since 2013. As bad as we've been, we've not had a cleaning of house since 2013. So the fact that it seems like a new era in Jacksonville, I'm excited for the moment. I'm very excited, and obviously a lot of work to do, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this offseason, seeing the staff that Cohen puts together, seeing what improvements the team makes. I think this team can go places. I have faith now that things are changing.
Yeah, and I know Patrick was, you've been calling for Baalke's head ever since I've known you. And now that it's finally happened, I mean, what do you make of it, Patrick? And if you obviously, you being a Jags fan, Colin's a Jags fan, you guys can hash this out all you want.
Yeah, right now we've got the positivity of the unknown. We don't know how bad it's going to be, so it might be good this time. And you've got to cling to that hope as a sportsman, otherwise you just lose your will to watch the sport, I think. My biggest concern right now is that it looks like it's going to be a very inexperienced staff in their new roles, brand new head coach, might be brand new OC, brand new DC, brand new GM. That feels like it might take a little bit of time to bed in and build up more than you'd expect if you were hiring more experienced folks to take you forward. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But we've tried experienced stuff before and not really got anywhere except for the odd kind of freak season peak. It's been, 9 years of terrible, 1 year of decent for the organization's history. And really, as a fan base, you want a bit more than that. So hopefully a slower build with a more inexperienced staff to build together and be a bit more cohesive than we saw in the last regime will stand us in good stead. You've got to hope for the best at this point, and at least you can see a path to it now, which I couldn't with Doug and Balky still in charge. And I'm glad that eventually Shad did the right thing and got rid of Balky, because a new head coach still with Balky in the GM position would give you absolutely no reason to hope for a good future.
Yeah, the other thing with Balky was back in 22 when the Jaguars fired Urban Meyer after the 21 season. The Jags were the first team to fire, and they were the last team to hire. They interviewed Doug Peterson, and then it took about 50 days to do a second interview with Doug Peterson. He was not their top guy, but Khan was adamant on keeping Trent Baalke, and no one wanted to come to Jacksonville as a result. Even though you had Trevor Lawrence, even though you had cap space, no one wanted to come to Jacksonville because of Trent Baalke. And I think finally Shad Khan got the memo after Liam Cohen turned down the Jags at first. I think he finally got the memo that, hey, no one's going to want to come to Jacksonville if Trent Baalke's there. It really is amazing how 2 weeks ago on that Wednesday at about 12 o'clock Eastern time, 11 o'clock Eastern time, I was thinking we're screwed. We're completely screwed in terms of the organization. Khan is just tied to Baalke. We're going to blow this hire. We're going to blow Trevor's prime. This is awful. Like, Shad Khan is a terrible owner, and this is just a mess. And then 48 hours later, it's like, all right, let's ride. We got it. Everything worked out. So the inexperienced staff, I definitely think it's not going to be an old staff, but to your point, I mean, we tried going for the older guys before. We tried with Coughlin. We tried with Nielsen. Tried with Marone. Tried with Urban Meyer. We tried with plenty of experienced guys. And, I'm willing for a fresh start. I'm willing to just see what the heck happens. I trust Cohen, and I trust him to build the right staff, and I trust Baselli to make the right calls. And they've earned the benefit of the doubt. This is a new Jags team for now, at least. For at least a year, they've earned the benefit of the doubt. So I'm willing to just let it ride and see what the heck happens.
Yeah, very much so. And I wanted to ask another thing while we had you on. You put out that great video about the Arizona Stadium being transformed into the Rams host home game. And I plugged it on the show at the time, if I remember. I just wondered if you could talk about some of your highlights of that game day experience.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. I was pleasantly surprised by how good of a job that the Cardinals and the State Farm Sam staff did. I was really, really surprised. I thought it was just going to be they do the field and that's it. But they really went the extra mile. They put up a lot of pop-up tents. They even replaced some of the booths, putting up signage and stuff. There was a lot of signage around the stadium, not across all the stadium, but there was a decent amount of signage for this. And it was just an interesting atmosphere, because I've been to a few playoff games before. I've been to 2 Jags playoff games in my life, and it was very tense. It was a very, very tense atmosphere. This one was not very tense. I mean, it was, maybe part of it was the game was not that good, and the Vikings were out of it by halftime, but this was one of those where it felt like there was a lot of gratitude and like we get to experience this. It really felt like a very laid-back atmosphere for a playoff game, which I was not expecting, but it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. They had all the entertainment. The band that usually does the Cardinals pregame entertainment did the pregame entertainment for this one. They went the extra mile. I was really, really pleased with how it went, and the Cardinals stepped up big time. The Cardinals really, really stepped up big time, and hopefully it never comes to that again. Hopefully we never see a neutral site playoff game in Arizona again. But for how they did it, I really got to commend the Cardinals, because they really knocked it out of the park.
Well said.
And you're talking about like your Jaguars, just to bring it back to them very, very quickly. To apologize. It's still a very young nucleus in that team, particularly in the offense. Trevor Lawrence has been there a couple of years now. But you mentioned guys like Tank Bigsby. You mentioned the wide receiver whose name I've completely forgotten, the rookie.
Right, Thomas.
Oh, yeah. And Tom, I mean, what a player he is. So when the coaches do come in, whoever wants to finalize all of the staff and the personnel, I think there's got to be a lot that they're going to be looking at saying, we've got a nice, young, talented roster here to build around. And I think, I had the Jags as my dark horse in the AFC last year. As in like a possible surprise playoff team. Didn't work. But, I think it's quite a lot to look forward to for the Jaguars. It really is. So here's hoping they do okay. Now, there's a game on this week, Colin. It's the last one. It's the Super Bowl.
Oh, I've heard.
What we require from you is a score, a prediction for a score. And keep in mind, there's a trophy riding on this. And bragging rights over all of us in the UK who think we know everything there is to know about American football. So, What is your prediction?
Well, I can't bet against the Chiefs until they give me a reason to. That's been my MO for the whole season. Is that even if it looks like they're not the better team on paper, I cannot bet against KC until they give me a reason to bet against them. And as good as the Eagles are, I really believe the Eagles are one of the most talented teams in NFL history. There really are no weaknesses as kicker and wide receiver 3 with Dotson. I really think, looking at how poorly Sirianni has coached at times with in-game management this season, and they still win games, I really believe that the Eagles are one of the most talented teams of all time. Like, the roster that Roseman has constructed has been magnificent. But it goes back to my thing of I can't bet against KC until they give me a reason to. I'm going to say this could be one of those, it could be like Super Bowl 25, where the Chiefs just let Barkley have his yards and then stop Hurts. I could see it playing out like that. I'm going to say 30-24 KC is my pick.
30.
Now, the interesting thing is that KC has trailed at the half in every Super Bowl that they have played in under Mahomes and Reed. They've trailed at the half in every Super Bowl. They've not led, I should say. They've not led at the half in any Super Bowl that they played under Mahomes and Reed. Now, will that work will it be okay against Barkley and whatnot, who can control time possession? I'm not sure. But I'm not betting against the Chiefs.
I know where you're coming from. It's funny you mentioned that, that they've not led going into half. Will that work against the Eagles? While we were off air earlier, I believe Jake and I were talking about the Eagles. There was a game, and I want to say it was the Commanders, but I can't remember, where the Eagles had the lead with like 10 minutes to go in the game, started a drive, and that was the end of the game. I think it was the Packers game.
Or was
it the Packers game?
Yeah, it was like an 8-minute drive.
Yeah, and
Green Bay kicked the field goal with like 8 minutes left, thinking they were going to get it back, and they only got back like 30 seconds left.
Yeah, and because we know what Kansas City are like. If you give Patrick Mahomes, well, we've seen what he can do in 13 seconds. Never mind if you give him 2 minutes on a timeout. But the Eagles are the one team that you would look at and say, if anyone gets the ball back with 5 minutes to go and a 1-point lead, it's the Eagles who can just churn those 5 minutes out with Saquon. Saquon's been immense this year. I'm the more I talk about this game, the more I'm looking forward to it. Because when at the beginning of this week, I was like, can't be bothered. Kind of have to watch it because we're doing a podcast. Not that I wasn't going to watch it, but the more I talk about it, and the more people I talk to about it, the more I'm looking forward to this game. Jake, did you have something you were going to say there?
It was the Battle of Pennsylvania against the Steelers. It was 10 minutes 29 on the clock when they got the ball. They ran 21 plays and saw out the game. So
is that the one where they ended the game? 10
So having multiple times this season.
drive to end.
multiple times this season where they just run like a 7-8 minute drive at the very end.
And yet, they're also a team, because we saw the meme going around after the playoff game after the NFC Championship game, where the Commanders ran an 18-play drive to start the game, kicked the field goal, and the Eagles went, give it a Saquon 60-yard touchdown. The Eagles can hit you in one play, but if they want to, they can kill 10 minutes on the clock. And that's a nice thing to have in your arsenal.
As a Rams fan, I'd like to say I have first-hand evidence of what they can do with just a couple plays here and there, and then yonk, gone. Just the PTSD is real. Okay.
I mean, Barkley is having what I consider to be, if they win the Super Bowl, it's the greatest season by any running back of all time.
Yeah,
especially by the postseason. I mean, 2,000 yards, the postseason performance, Super Bowl. I mean, this might be the best season ever by any back.
I think you saw it with the Giants stopping Jim Kelly and the Bills because they just didn't give them the ball. I think that's exactly what Colin's saying. Like, the one way to stop the Chiefs is don't give them the ball. Don't give Mahomes like 3 minutes to win the game, because guess what? He'll go and win the game. So the very easy formula for the Eagles is just control that clock and just replay what the Giants did to the Bills.
Yeah, Super Bowl 25. You're absolutely right there, Jake. And the thing with the Chiefs is that I don't see them with that quick bang bang scoring a touchdown. Unless the Eagles forget to cover Xavier Worthy, which I don't think they're going to do. I don't think there's any chance that if the Chiefs are driving down by 6 with a minute to go in the game, that Xavier Worthy is getting an inch of space. I can't see it.
But it's the playoffs, so you know that about 3 times in the game, Travis Kelce's going to find himself
Wide
20
open,
yards
yeah.
open somehow. and everybody watching the game goes, how does this keep happening in the playoffs?
No idea whatsoever. So Colin, the other thing that we do require from you is, of course, a random stat. Do you have a random stat for us?
I do have a random stat.
Wonderful.
All right, so when people think of the worst performances by any quarterback in a Super Bowl, usually the usual suspects come to mind. You think of Kerry Collins at Super Bowl 35. You think of Craig Morton at Super Bowl 12, where he completed 8 passes, but 4 of them went to the other team.
Yeah.
You think of Tony Eason, who I think started off 0 for 6 that game and didn't complete a single pass. But there's one that just blows my mind that no one really talks about. I think it's because they put up a decent amount of points, and they had the lead in the fourth quarter. Granted, it wasn't because of him they put up the points, but let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. The reason they got Dan Marino, just how bad David Woodley was at Super Bowl 17, because I'm not sure we're going to see anything like this again. Do you guys know when the last time Woodley completed a pass in that game was? If you look at the box score, the last time he completed a pass in that game was with 10 minutes to go. They were, okay, like, that's already pretty bad, considering the fact they were trailing. Now, you might think, well, 10 minutes ago in the fourth quarter, that's bad, but is that really weird? I meant the second quarter.
What?
The last time the Dolphins completed a pass in that game was with 10 minutes to go in the second quarter.
That's mental.
David Woodley was that bad. Keep in mind, he was, before that game, the AFC Championship, he was awful. He was 9 for 21 with 3 picks, pass rating of 15.5. But he was fine because Richard Todd was worse. But the very next game, I mean, Woodley started off with a deep touchdown pass to Jimmy Cephalo. But other than that, with 76 passing yards on the second play from the first pass that David Woodley, excuse me, the second pass that Woodley threw, his first completion, was 76 yards. After that point, 4 net passing yards the rest of the game.
Was that the John Riggins game? 17?
Yes.
Wow.
2/3 of the game, he didn't complete a pass. That is
the
quite
final
impressive.
2/3 of the game, even though they were trailing in one, and had to
they were
throw, he
losing
didn't
the
complete a single pass. He was that bad.
It's not like he was.
And that
sitting
is
on
why they drafted Dan Marino when they got the opportunity.
Wow, that is an impressive stat. That's very impressive. Thank you very much for that one.
Yeah. We're going to see guys completing like 25 passes in that stretch before Willie completes one.
5 minutes to go. 10 minutes to go in the first half.
Yeah.
Oh my word. That's
that game would have been at the Rose Bowl as well.
I think that was.
Yeah. So over 100,000 people saw one guy not complete a pass for that length of time. But what? Oh no!
And they were leading for most of that game too.
Yeah,
That's the crazy part. I think people don't talk about that performance because it wasn't. He didn't get benched. They put him 17, but one of them was a chunk play. One of them was a kickoff return, so he didn't do anything with that. And it was close enough in the game. It was a pretty good game. It was close enough where it's not remembered the same way, but really should be talked about the same way with the Craig Morton and the Kerry Collins and the Tony Easton, because it was something else.
All I can remember, as I say, was the Riggins one. The Riggins run, that big fourth down run. And I think it was on the... what's that program called? Is it America's Game? The Super Bowl story, the Super Bowl winners.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and there's one of the Dolphins one of the Redskins at the time players talking about how someone had managed to get a horn from a rig into the stadium, and you can hear him blasting it as Riggins is running for his touchdown. It's like, how did he get that? And security was obviously quite lax back then, going into stadiums. He had a horn from a truck, and you can hear it because Riggins was called the Diesel. And if you watch the replay of that, you can hear this, it's like a foghorn going off. Someone carried that into a stadium.
Yeah. I mean, they don't always let you have bottles of water coming into some stadiums now.
When my lovely wife and I, who's both an angel and a saint, we went to a game at MetLife Stadium in 2021. It was an awful game. It was the Jets and Dolphins. It was appallingly bad. She took one of those wee clutch bags. It's like a purse, but it's on a thing that goes over your shoulder. You know, they searched that, right? In Super Bowl 17, a guy probably had 3 other pals carrying something with a pallet truck to get it into the stadium, and he was allowed in. So I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it was very, very, very different in the 80s. Very different. I know, like at New York stadiums now, if you have whenever you buy a water bottle, they take the cap off.
Yes,
they think you're gonna have the arm of Patrick Mahomes and just chuck it from the 400 level onto the field.
Yes, they do. They actually, in fact, they've started doing that at gigs. I was at a gig in Murrayfield in Edinburgh, here in Scotland, seeing Bruce Springsteen, and I bought a bottle of Coke at the stadium, and they took the cap off. And I'm going, well, hang on, what if I, take a drink and I want to cap it? No, you're not allowed to take the cap. You're not allowed to have the cap. And I don't know what it's like there, Colin, but here, it's recycling daft. The caps are now attached to the bottles with a wee plastic thing, about an inch and a half of plastic. So when you open up your bottle of Coke, the cap hangs off, so you can't accidentally throw it away. But they were having to rip these off to give you a bottle of Coke with a really sharp bit of plastic now sticking out, just so they wouldn't give you the cap. So top tip, if you're ever going to a gig at Murrayfield Stadium, bring your own bottle top with you, because they will remove it for you and you won't see it again. We're just helping the community now.
We've come a long way from Eagles fans sneaking entire kegs in under a wheelchair.
There you go. Well, listen, Colin, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl. And hopefully we'll get you back on, perhaps pre-draft.
Absolutely. Nice I'd love to come back. Love to come back. Love this place. So I appreciate you guys' time.
It's great. Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care of yourself now.
See you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.